Picture this. You're seated in a walnut-paneled law office in downtown Seattle, watching your relatives slice through a $40 million legacy like it's dessert at a family banquet. Your mother walks away with the $25 million Sonoma Valley estate. Your father inherits the logistics company valued at $30 million. Your brother claims the classic Aston Martins and a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Your cousin receives a yacht and the family's Cape Cod retreat. And you? You're handed a plain white envelope. Just that. As laughter ripples through the room, you can't help but wonder if this is some elaborate prank. But what no one realizes is that this envelope will rewrite your entire life. I'm Clara Reynolds, and at 26, I thought I knew exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. Dependable, sensible, the one who kept everyone else from falling apart. I was the teacher, the granddaughter who spent every summer assisting Grandpa Henry with his endless projects, while everyone else partied in Europe or drifted through life. When Grandpa passed away at 94, I expected something meaningful. Maybe a letter, a keepsake, a gesture acknowledging all those years by his side. After all, he'd been my mentor, my chess partner, the one who taught me how to think before moving a piece. The will was read in Mr. Alden's firm, the same office where Seattle's old money families had settled their affairs for generations. Mom sat polished in a black Prada suit, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue that didn't fool anyone. Dad kept checking his Patek Philippe, likely calculating how soon he could rebrand the logistics firm. My brother, Lucas, lounged with the lazy confidence of someone certain he'd hit the jackpot, while cousin Bianca whispered figures to her husband about property taxes. When Mr. Alden began reading, the numbers were staggering. Dad got Reynolds Freight Systems, $30 million easily. Mom received the Sonoma estate and its art collection, appraised at 25. Lucas inherited the car collection and the Manhattan penthouse, another $8 million at least. Bianca was awarded the yacht Elysium and the Cape Cod home. Then Mr. Alden turned to me. My heartbeat echoed in the silence. This was it, my moment. Grandpa had always said I was the one who saw the board clearly. To my granddaughter, Clara Reynolds, Mr. Alden read, I leave this envelope. The laughter came instantly. Awkward, mean-spirited. Mom even chuckled and gave my knee a pitying tap. Well, darling, she said, with feigned sympathy, I'm sure it's something touching, maybe a sweet note. Their faces told the real story. They thought it was hilarious. Poor Clara, the forgotten one, left with nothing but paper. Adios, querida, Mom added, mangling her Spanish. I suppose your grandfather wasn't feeling very generous. The words stung worse than I expected. 26 years of being the helper, the fixer, the one they called when things went wrong. And this was what I got? A joke. Lucas leaned in, smirking. Maybe it's Monopoly money, sis. Fits your luck. I clutched the envelope. There was something solid inside, not thick enough for a check, but definitely more than a letter. Don't take it so personally, Clara, Bianca chimed in. I'm sure Grandpa left you something appropriate for your position. Her tone made it clear she didn't think my position was much at all. I stood, the leather chair groaning behind me. If you'll excuse me, I need some air. Their laughter followed me down the hall. I caught snippets, Mom telling someone she's always been dramatic. Maybe it's just a keepsake or dating advice. In the elevator, alone except for my reflection in the mirrored doors, I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a first-class ticket to Monaco, dated for the following week, and a single line written in Grandpa's distinctive script. Trust activated on your 26th birthday, sweetheart. Time to claim what's been yours all along. My breath caught. Beneath the ticket was a second item, a gold-embossed business card. Prince Adrian of Monaco, private secretary on the back. Grandpa's handwriting again. He's managing your trust. Then came the bank document from Credit Suisse, addressed to Clara Reynolds Trust. The balance made my stomach flip. 347 million. My hands trembled as I counted the zeros again and again. That night, I stared at the bank statement for hours, my mind unable to process what those numbers meant. $347 million. My grandfather, the man everyone thought was just a shrewd businessman with a knack for timing, had been quietly running an empire none of us knew existed. I dialed the international number printed on the Credit Suisse document. After a gauntlet of security questions, 3 transfers, and what felt like an interrogation, a Swiss banker with crisp British diction came on the line. Yes, Miss Reynolds, he confirmed politely. Your trust was created when you were 16 and has been under professional management for a decade. Your grandfather, Mr. Henry Reynolds, established it with specific activation instructions tied to your 26th birthday. But I never signed anything, I said, my voice shaking. You didn't need to. As the settler, your grandfather held full authority to establish it on your behalf. The trust has grown significantly from international holdings and diversified investments. International holdings. Suddenly, those late-night chess games with Grandpa, filled with hypothetical business scenarios, didn't seem hypothetical at all. He hadn't been making conversation. He'd been training me. A week later, I stepped off an Air France flight at Nice airport. A driver in a tailored black suit stood waiting, holding a sign that read, Miss Clara Reynolds, beneficiary, Reynolds Global Trust. The drive along the French Riviera felt unreal. Sunlight bouncing off the Mediterranean as if the whole world shimmered just for me. When we crossed into Monaco, everything felt cinematic. The yachts in the harbor, the scent of salt and jasmine in the air, the way strangers glanced at me as if they somehow knew I belonged there. Inside the marble lobby of a private office overlooking the sea, I met Prince Adrian Devereux, my grandfather's friend and the trust's managing officer. He rose from behind an oak desk, effortlessly elegant, offering a firm handshake. Miss Reynolds, he said, with an accent that carried both warmth and command. I was honored to serve your grandfather. He was one of the most brilliant investors I have ever known. His office looked like something out of a power broker's fantasy. Leather-bound portfolios, thick documents stamped with global bank seals, and panoramic windows framing the glittering coast. Please sit, Adrian said, motioning to the chair across from him. I believe your grandfather intended this meeting to be enlightening. He opened a folder thicker than a novel. These are your holdings, he explained. You possess controlling interest in the Azure Bay Resort and Casino in Monte Carlo, generating approximately $45 million annually. You also hold majority shares in the Belmont Grand in Las Vegas, producing roughly $150 million each year. Additionally, there are commercial real estate assets in London, Tokyo, and Sydney. I blinked. You mean I own all of that? Adrian smiled faintly. Technically, the trust owns it. You are its sole beneficiary. I felt dizzy. How could I not know any of this? Your grandfather believed in modesty and perspective, Adrian said gently. He arranged for you to receive a yearly stipend of 60,000. Comfortable, but not excessive. He wanted you to experience work, responsibility, and independence before discovering your true fortune. Everything clicked. The small but steady balance in my savings account. The ease of paying rent despite a teacher's salary. The extra deposit each December that I'd always assumed came from a tax adjustment. Adrian, I said softly, my throat tightening, how much am I actually worth? He glanced at a document and then met my eyes. As of this morning, the trust's total value is estimated at 1.21 billion US dollars. I gripped the arms of my chair. I'm a billionaire? You've always been, Miss Reynolds, he said with a knowing smile. You just didn't know it yet. My heart pounded in disbelief. I thought about my family, their laughter, their smug faces at the will reading, my mother's cruel little comment. They had no idea. Your grandfather was very deliberate, Adrian continued. He believed that if your family knew, they would either resent you, manipulate you, or see you as a walking wallet rather than a person. He wanted you to build your own life first. For the first time, I understood. Grandpa hadn't just trusted me with money. He'd trusted me with legacy, with vision, with purpose. That evening, Adrian arranged a private tour of the Azure Bay Resort. The general manager, a charismatic Frenchman named Claude Moreau, greeted me at the entrance with champagne and figures that made my head spin. 300 luxury suites, 5 Michelin-starred restaurants, and our casino maintains a 94% occupancy rate year-round, he explained. Your trust has been an extraordinary owner. As I walked through the marble corridors, past glittering chandeliers and gaming tables filled with laughter and music, I felt the strangest mix of awe and belonging. This wasn't just wealth, it was empire. When I returned to the penthouse suite reserved for me that night, I opened the balcony doors to the soft rush of ocean air and whispered, You really did teach me everything, Grandpa. The next morning, Adrian's assistant informed me the company jet was waiting to fly me to Las Vegas. There, I'd see the other side of my inheritance. As I sank into the buttery leather seat of the private jet, a jet I apparently owned, I smiled for the first time since that will reading. It was time to make my next move. Just as Grandpa had taught me, one move at a time, always 3 steps ahead. The Las Vegas skyline shimmered like gold when the jet began its descent. Even from the air, the Belmont Grand Resort and Casino stood out, a towering symbol of excess and power. 47 stories of glass and light rising from the desert like a crown. At the terminal, a woman in a sharp white suit waited beside a limousine that looked longer than most city buses. Miss Reynolds, she greeted, her tone efficient yet warm. I'm Samantha Chen, General Manager of the Belmont Grand. Welcome home. Home. The word made my heart jolt. As we drove through the strip, Samantha gave me a concise briefing. Your property generates roughly $150 million annually, with consistent growth and record-high occupancy. The board recently approved potential expansions in Dubai and Singapore, pending your confirmation. My confirmation, I repeated, the phrase sounding surreal. Inside the Belmont Grand, everything screamed sophistication. The marble atrium, the gold-trimmed elevators, the endless flow of well-dressed guests who had no idea they were walking through my investment portfolio. We toured the executive suite, the casino floor, and a rooftop lounge overlooking the city. Samantha handed me the latest quarterly report. The numbers were staggering. Profits, margins, returns, all of it stable and climbing. Your trust has maintained an aggressive but calculated growth strategy, she explained. It's why you're outperforming nearly every comparable enterprise worldwide. That night, over dinner in the private dining room, I couldn't help but ask the question that had been circling my thoughts since Monaco. Samantha, I said, setting down my glass, if someone wanted to acquire a smaller company, say a family-owned shipping business worth around 30 million, how long would that take? She raised an eyebrow. For a trust of your size? Maybe 30 days, depending on due diligence. That's barely pocket change in your world. Pocket change. My pulse quickened. I thought about Reynolds Freight Systems, Dad's company. It had been struggling for years under his leadership. Grandpa had kept it afloat quietly, but since his passing, debt had piled up, and Dad was too proud to ask for help. Later, in my suite, I opened my laptop and reviewed public financial data. The numbers were worse than I expected. High debt, low liquidity, overstretched operations. Despite its prestige, the company was hanging by a thread. It wasn't just a business problem, it was personal. That night, I called Adrian. His calm voice came through the line immediately. Clara, how is Las Vegas treating you? Better than I expected, I replied. But I have a question, one that might sound unusual. I'm listening. What if I wanted to purchase my father's company, quietly, through a holding entity? There was a pause. You want to buy Reynolds Freight? I want to save it, I said. Dad won't accept help, but if an anonymous buyer appeared with the right offer. Adrian's tone softened. And you're comfortable with that deception? I stared out the window at the neon cityscape below. For now, yes. They laughed when I got that envelope. Maybe it's time I play the game on my terms. He exhaled slowly, as if half admiring, half warning me. Very well. I'll have our legal team structure a shell corporation through Neptune Holdings International. The acquisition can be completed within the month. Over the next few days, I balanced two worlds. Mornings were spent in conference calls with investment advisors and legal teams. Evenings, I returned to my modest apartment in Portland, blending back into my old life. My family remained oblivious, still seeing me as the quiet teacher with a flair for dramatic exits. On Tuesday morning, the acquisition offer was delivered to Reynolds Freight's corporate office. By noon, my phone buzzed. Dad's name flashed across the screen. Clara, he said, his voice tight. You won't believe this. We just got a buyout offer from some international investment group. Out of nowhere. Really? I asked, feigning curiosity. Is that good? It's an incredible offer. 45 million. That's 30% above our valuation. They want a response by Friday. Sounds like a good opportunity, I said carefully. You should consider it. That Thursday, I joined the family for dinner. The first time since the will reading. The tension was thick as Dad spread out spreadsheets across the dining table, like war maps. Mom hovered nearby, pretending to understand. Lucas scrolled on his phone, half listening. As they discussed the deal, I asked, "What's the plan for employee retention? And the integration terms, are they keeping management in place?" Mom gave me a suspicious look. Those are very specific questions for someone who teaches for a living. Grandpa always said the fine print reveals the truth, I replied calmly. Dad glanced up from his papers. "You're asking better questions than my attorney, Clara." I smiled faintly. Maybe I inherited more from Grandpa than we realized. The next afternoon, at 4:47 p.m., Dad signed the papers. By 5:15, the sale was official, and by 5:30, I owned Reynolds Freight Systems. The weekend after the acquisition, I made my next move. I bought the Ridgeview Estate, a 20-acre architectural masterpiece overlooking Seattle's skyline. Price tag, $18 million. The kind of place featured in glossy magazines, complete with glass walls, a sweeping marble staircase, and a view that made the whole city look like it belonged to me. When Mom called and I casually gave her the address, she paused. "Clara, that's the mansion some international buyer just purchased. Are you house sitting?" "I'm not in front of it," I said, standing in the grand foyer. "I'm inside it." There was silence on the line. Then, "Clara, what on earth are you talking about?" "You should come over," I said. "Bring everyone." An hour later, my parents, Lucas and Bianca, stood frozen in the entryway, staring at the crystal chandelier above them. The same family who once mocked me for holding an envelope now gawked at marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows like tourists. Dad was the first to speak. "How exactly did you buy this house?" "Grandpa's envelope," I said simply. It wasn't just a note. It was notification that my trust had been activated. They all stared at me. I've been a billionaire since my 26th birthday. The silence that followed could have filled the entire house. Mom blinked first. "That's impossible." "Not impossible," I replied, handing her the Credit Suisse letter. "Just inconvenient for everyone who assumed I was the leftover." I turned to Dad. "There's one more thing we should talk about." His brows furrowed. "What is it?" I opened my phone and pulled up the final acquisition notice. Reynolds Freight. It now belongs to Neptune Holdings International. That's my company. I bought your business. Dad's face went pale. "You... what?" "You sold it for $45 million, I said evenly, which was generous, considering the debt structure and liquidity issues. Lucas swore under his breath. Bianca's mouth fell open. Mom sat down hard on the nearest chair. "I didn't do it to hurt you," I continued. "I did it to save the company. But I needed you to understand what it feels like when decisions about your life happen without your input." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of the fountain outside. 3 days later, Lucas called. His tone was sharp with panic. "What the hell is going on, Clara? Are you seriously some secret billionaire?" "I'm not secret anymore," I said, sipping espresso on the terrace, the morning sun spilling across the marble. "This is insane. We need a family meeting tonight." "We already had one," I said. "It was called the will reading." The threats came next. Talk of lawsuits, fraud, manipulation, even elder abuse. I actually laughed. "Lucas," I said calmly, "I have the best legal team in 2 hemispheres. You can't afford to sneeze near the people who represent me. That evening, they all showed up anyway, standing at my gate like a delegation of wounded royalty. I let them in, but set clear terms. You can come in, I said, but we do this my way. No yelling, no accusations, no theatrics. They agreed, barely. Inside my living room, a space lined with glass walls and a panoramic view of the city, they sat together on the sofa like defendants awaiting sentencing. So, I said, what did you want to discuss? Dad cleared his throat. We owe you an apology. For what, specifically? For misunderstanding your inheritance. I shook my head. That's not what you should apologize for. You should apologize for how you treated me. For assuming I was worth less because you thought I had less. No one met my gaze. The conversation that followed was the most honest one we'd ever had. For the first time, they listened, really listened, as I explained that I didn't need their approval, but I was open to a relationship built on respect instead of hierarchy. There is one thing I need from all of you, I said finally. Public acknowledgement. The same way you bragged about your inheritances, I want you to admit you were wrong about mine. Social media, newspaper, I don't care. Just make it public. Within a week, it happened. Dad's statement appeared in the Seattle Business Journal, calling me a visionary successor. Mom posted on Facebook about underestimating her brilliant daughter. Lucas and Bianca followed with brief but clearly mortified Instagram notes. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming truth. And in the end, I didn't fire Dad. I kept him on as general manager of Reynolds Freight. Same office, same responsibilities, same team. The only difference was that now, he reported to me. 6 months later, during a family dinner I reluctantly agreed to attend, the air felt different. Careful, yes, but genuinely respectful. The new ownership has been incredible, Dad admitted. Access to capital, stable growth. I can actually focus on operations again. Mom asked, when you bought the company, did you do it to hurt your father or to help him? I smiled. Both. I wanted him to feel what I did, being left out of decisions that matter. But I also couldn't watch the company fail and see people lose their jobs. A year later, I stood at a podium beneath soft stage lights, facing an audience of teachers, community leaders, and journalists. Behind me hung a banner reading the Henry Reynolds Foundation for Educational Innovation. It was the culmination of months of planning, a project I designed in secret, inspired by the man who had seen something in me long before anyone else did. Our first initiative, I announced, is a $200 million grant to support STEM programs in underfunded schools across the Pacific Northwest. Applause filled the auditorium, but my heart was somewhere else, in the memory of my grandfather, sitting across a chessboard, eyes gleaming with patience and pride. He used to tell me, I continued, that the greatest gifts don't always come in shiny packages. Sometimes they arrive disguised as challenges or even disappointments. What matters is whether you have the courage to open them. I paused, letting the words settle. Today, we pass that lesson forward to the next generation of thinkers, builders, and dreamers. After the ceremony, as I walked through the crowd shaking hands, I could almost hear Grandpa's voice again. Every move has purpose, Clara, even the ones that seem small. That night, standing on my terrace with the city lights stretching beneath me, I thought back to that moment in the law office. The laughter, the condescension, the envelope that changed everything. 26 years of being underestimated had taught me something far more valuable than money ever could. True worth isn't defined by how others see you. It's defined by how you see yourself. Wealth can buy power, comfort, even silence, but it can't buy self-respect. That has to be earned, one decision at a time. And as for my family, well, things had changed. The tension had softened into something resembling respect. Dad and I spoke weekly about business strategy. Mom finally stopped comparing me to everyone else's children. Even Lucas, who once joked about monopoly money, had started his own consulting firm and occasionally asked me for advice. The dynamic had shifted, not because of the billions in my account, but because I had finally stopped asking for their approval. Before heading inside, I glanced at the framed photo on the outdoor table. Grandpa Henry, smiling beside me during one of our summer chess matches. Checkmate, I whispered. Because in the end, that's what it had always been about. Not revenge, not fortune, strategy, patience, purpose. Sometimes, the most overlooked person in the room turns out to be the one holding all the pieces. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the wisdom to know your own value.